If the God we are talking about is the Christian, Islamic, Judaic God, then we are talking about a God that knows everything, knows where each and every atom in our body is at all times, knows our thoughts even when we're dreaming or asleep, knows where every atom in our world is and in every star, and in each of the estimated billion alien worlds, as well as the aliens themselves, knows their thoughts as well, and has the power to change anything against the laws of physics. Something like this that has so much power should be able to make this world, as well as every other world in the universe, a nirvana, but decides not to do so. Not only that, but blames us for making this world the way it is. Not only is this supernatural being in control of every physical atom in the universe, but it has no physical body to speak of, no brain to do such a thing. It has no visible energy, nor detectable energy or matter to make things happen. And it's transcendent, neither matter nor energy. And it's possibly even of another dimension. If one examines a deity like this skeptically, then one might come to the conclusion that it's very difficult to accept that such a God exists without much evidence of said God. If someone comes to you and says, he believes in the flying spaghetti monster. How many people here have heard of the flying spaghetti monster? That's the atheist God. That's the God where, I think it was, you know who made that up, Vaughn? Listening, Vaughn? Wake up.
I did, but I can't remember.
Richard Dawkins, I think.
Huh?
I think it was before him, actually.
Yeah, it was before.
Okay. That is the flying spaghetti monster is the atheist God. There is no God, so we call him something silly. That tells you, suppose, I'll back up a little bit. If someone comes to you and says he believes in the flying spaghetti monster God and tells you all the powers of this God, would you start asking him questions? Especially if you believe in the God that you believe in now. Of course you would. Either that or you'd call the mental institution to come pick him up. If someone told you that he found an old book hidden underground in his backyard and it was from God, would you believe him? Probably not. Finally, if a Muslim, Buddhist, or Hindu told you there was another God, other gods, and billions of other people out there were sincerely and strongly believing in this God, were you to believe him? Well, this is a little more believable than the previous examples, but only because you know the fact that others believe in different gods. You might start wondering why so many other people around the world believe in these gods sincerely. And that's a good start for any believer, because if you say there's one God, it's a little bit arrogant in a way. If you say there's no gods, it's actually arrogance. People have called me arrogant. How can you say that? It's something that I believed in from a childhood. It just doesn't make any sense. I've grown up with it. I've seen miracles, coincidences, and I've seen people. I've seen the work of the Lord. How can you say there's no God? Well, we'll get into that a little bit later. Here's a couple questions I have. And again, I could talk a lot of time about this, and I enjoy talking about this. But if you have any answers to these questions, please let me know. Why are there so many evil acts in the Bible? Why are the previous pagan gods so much like Jesus? And I think that Doug knows a very good question because I saw you on YouTube. Why aren't miracles still occurring today? And we're talking about big miracles that they used to, not little miracles that you pray for. Cancer, yes, it does go into remission sometime on its own. If we have free will, I'm sorry?
Rising from the dead type miracles.
Rising from, that's a pretty big one. If we have free will, how can God be omnipotent? You can't have free will and have God know that what you're going to do and then you change your mind. What verses do you throw out when they are proven wrong? For instance, slavery. Why has God given me and all the non-believers the curiosity and aptitude to pursue our journey, our personal journey? And why do the religious leaders squash science discoveries during the Dark Ages for nearly 1,000 years? Now that's a little bit outside this discussion, but that was religion that did that. It could have been Islam, it could have been Hindu, it could have been any other religion, but it happened to be the Christian religion that did that. The God question can also take up several days of speaking, but what I can say in my humble opinion, that I have looked but not found any evidence of any gods, or for that matter, any supernatural powers of any kind in this world. Psychics, dowsers, water dowsers, all those people have been proven all wrong. This is not a cynical viewpoint, as I mentioned earlier. It's a rational viewpoint that makes me feel much more comfortable knowing that I make decisions on my own and without any mystical support. I believe that life unexplored is not worth living. This phrase sounds like it supports suicide, but if it did, I would be obviously totally against it. What it means is this: if one travels through life believing anyone tells one to believe, one has not lived a good life. If one believes others blindly with total obedience, then one has not lived a life that is their own, but that of another. So why am I not a deist or a theist? It's because I have looked at so many religions and found many faults with all of them. It's because I see that if one belongs to a religion, and this is a really big point, I recently read this. If one belongs to a religion, it's supposed to make one feel better than those outside the religion. And I find something very wrong with this. It's because I see people making a decision on what others believe just because those in an authoritative position say it. When that happens, our community, as well as sometimes countries, gets split between different ideologies. Several examples are abortion, gay rights, stem cell research, not giving condoms to people in countries, Africa, who needs to protect them against AIDS, the desecration of science, the idea that man is sinful when he is born, and many other issues. But I see people who believe in religion as those who believe in something supernatural, something invisible. And the same way that I can't prove there isn't a God. So when I say there is no God, I don't mean to say there truly is no God, because that's a truth, an absolute truth, and there's no absolute truth in the world. What I say instead is there's no evidence of a God. And I'll tell you later on what will actually convince me, because I am convincible, like everybody else. Something that cannot be proven, something that makes them feel more comfortable, that isn't intangible. In my world, in my opinion, that is a false, comforting world. Well, why am I an atheist? Another reason is that I accept scientific research as fact. Many, many things that were explained by supernatural forces in the past are now very clear and can be explained by a 10-year-old. Thunder, lightning, rain, disease, cancers, the sun and why seasons are created, earthquakes and tsunamis, why seasons, or did I say that again? I did say that. Where us humans came from, more about that, and how the universe created is accepted by scientific fact by a huge majority of scientists who work in their respective fields. I'm not going to say, I'm going to stop here for a moment, I'm not going to say that the scientists know what happened at the Big Bang or before the Big Bang, because scientists are actually very humble in that respect. If you ask a scientist what happened before the Big Bang, they'll have to say, well, I don't know. But if you take a second, and you take a trillionth of a second, and then you take a trillionth of a second after the Big Bang, they've actually made a mathematical model that fits how the universe is now from that trillionth of a second after the Big Bang. And if you want more information on that, I can guide you to the right resources. We are discovering things on Earth and through the universe that are so majestically amazing that even a good science fiction writer could not have thought of them. This is another reason I do not believe the God of the Bible. But there would be many things that God could have done to support his omniscience or all-knowingness. Here's one of them. And this would convince me that there might be a God. Wouldn't totally convince me. There'd have to be several things. What if God told you, if one of the authors of the Bible, to write E equals mc squared, and said in the Bible, this will be a great scientific discovery in the future? That would be pretty good evidence of an omniscient God who knew everything, and he convinced somebody to put it in the Bible. Of course, they wouldn't understand what it was, but, 1,700 years later, we saw that, and a scientist saw that, and Einstein saw that. He says, wow, he's absolutely right. That's pretty convincing, wouldn't it be? That's almost too convincing. But it would be very convincing. Another thing would be, and I'm going to go off topic a little bit here, if aliens landed in every capital in the world, out walked an alien with a big head and big eyes, and underneath his arm was a Bible in his language. That would pretty much convince me that it's possible there might be a God. Or, if aliens were around 2,000 years ago, they could have planted their own Bible. In fact, Jesus could be an alien. I rather think that Jesus was an alien than God, because any technologically superior, any superior technology from the future will look to us as if it's magic. Look at if a 747 landed in anywhere in the world 300 years ago. Whoever stepped out on that plane would have been treated like a god, just like Cortez did with the Incas or Mayans, one of those two. Here's another. What if God told any person of authority, religious or not, from the 5th century to start washing their hands? That's all. Very simple. Could even be in the Bible. Start washing their hands. How many millions would have not contracted any disease? Because obviously germ theory wasn't even discovered until the early or late 1700s. Probably hundreds of millions of people would have been saved by that. What if there was a message of love consistent through the entire Bible, instead of love and hate and destruction? Over 371 people were killed, if you count them up, and somebody actually did count the people up that God killed in the Bible directly without any human intervention. That's a lot, and there's answers from apologetics that I've heard from that. But it's a good question. If you're a Christian, you might say God did not do these things because he wanted us humans to learn on their own. Well, at first that might sound good. That to me doesn't make any sense though, because he supposedly told us so many other things to do and how to behave. Why didn't he tell us something in there that would really count in today's society? Not how to trade your ox with two goats, or how to treat your slaves, or how to treat your woman, but something substantial that would really solidify the belief in a God. That to me, I can recite hundreds of other what-if situations and many questions to me that are not answered satisfactorily for me to believe in a God. Julius Sweeney, once comedian, now philosopher, so once said, "What looks invisible looks a lot like something that is non-existent." So listen to this next statement for a moment. Although this sentence is debatable, it has meaning. If you can't see something, does it exist? Well, the answer actually is maybe. We can't see gravity, radiation, atoms, or molecules, but we know they exist. Why? Because we see the effects of gravity all around us. We can repeatedly test it for it and come up with the same results. Same for radiation and small particles. This is what makes any supernatural being or power hard to examine. You can't see God directly. It has no mass. You can't examine it by its effect. You can examine it by its effects. But what if you started examining its effects like I did and concluded there was no effect? Would the power be non-existent? No, it would not be non-existent simply because you didn't find it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And this is what's called an unfalsifiable claim. You can't prove that it doesn't exist. You can't prove a negative hypothesis, in other words. So if I said there was an orbiting teapot around the Earth, you couldn't prove it's not there. I said, well, it's too small for radar, it's too small for telescopes. You could not prove that it's not there. So I can't prove that a God or any supernatural power does not exist. What I can say that there is no empirical evidence of a God. And this makes me an agnostic atheist. An agnostic means I don't know if there is a God. But from what I can see, in my belief, there is no God. Another reason I'm an atheist is that there can't be just one religion that's right. Does everybody here that's a Christian think that their one religion is right and no other religions is right? Everybody? Okay, well, a few people didn't answer. Maybe they're asleep. Oh, and Susan over there. It brings to mind the I am right, you are wrong mentality. It seems to me that if one says that 1.2 billion Muslims are wrong, that one's religion is just a little bit arrogant. And there's even a religion out there with hundreds of millions of people in it, and they don't even believe there is a God, yet they are the most peaceful religion in the world. This is another reason why I kind of zero in on Christianity, because not only I don't believe in the religions, but Christianity happens to be the most destructive of all the religions. A wise man once said, "Good men do good things, bad men do bad things. It takes religion to make a good thing do bad things. A good man do bad things, excuse me." This is true for every person who has fought and died on the battlefield because they thought they were doing the right thing by following the wishes of the religious leaders. And it's still going on today, not necessarily by direct wars. But if you asked the 9/11 hijackers' families, what type of men were these men? These men killed so many people. Why did they do it? The family said, these were the nicest, gentle men you would ever meet. All of them, nearly all of them, had engineering degrees. One of them was even engaged. And they still did what they did because of their belief in religion. Now, obviously, it was politically motivated. Everybody knows that. But they did it. They did the dirty deed because they believed in their religion. It was only 6 months ago that I discovered proof that atheists were very moral. This kind of excited me because the morality thing is one issue that Christians really hold on to. I cannot be moral without my God. Let me take away God, your God, just for a moment. If you left here today and for 1 week you didn't believe in a God, would that change your behavior? Would you start going out and misbehaving? Would you start raping and pillaging? Of course not. Why? Because you have innate morals within you, like everybody has. I was first shocked that there was an actual proof. The proof itself is not the reason for my atheism, but it does support the fact that people can have good values and decent morals without religion. So where do people that have no morals, where are they? Where do they live? Does anybody have an idea?
Next door to me.
I'm sorry?
Next door to me.
I'm sorry to hear that. I had a neighbor like that as well one time. I'm glad I moved. Well, actually, she moved before me. Where do they live? More accurately, where are people that have no morals, commit a crime, and caught are? Now you know where they live. They live in prisons. That's where people who own the lowest morals we know of are. So let's take a look at how many atheists are in prison. Because I asked you before, you don't think atheists have a moral foundation. So there should be a lot of atheists in prison. Over, how many people? I think that it reached the 1 million or 2 million prison population mark just a few months ago. I forget which was, but it was big. We have more people in prisons than any other country per capita, that is, in the world. So there should be more atheists in prison, right? The reality is that there's only 0.2% of atheists in prison. That's about 100 times less than any other person of religious persuasion. Even I was skeptical of this statistic, me being a skeptic, so I looked it up on Google, and sure enough, there are several studies out there, mostly done by interns and PhD programs, and all the doctors get the credit. The reason for this is, I think the reason for this is that atheists explore their world more intently than religious people do. And what I mean by that is they explore everything around their world. A lot of times I'm asked, Bruce, how do you know so much about Christianity? Matthew 16:19. 19:16? I always get those two mixed up. My wife's favorite verse. Leave your families and join me. And my wife's thinking, if you ever leave me, I'll kill you. That's what, I got off a track there for a moment. Oh boy. I was also surprised through the internet many secular and atheist organizations that meet in Orange County. So I found them. I went to them and I found them very enjoyable, so much so that I started my own skeptics group that's kind of more of an atheist skeptics group several months ago. And I enjoy the company immensely because the people that are there not only believe the same way I do, just like you believe the same way you do, but we talk about other issues in the world as well. Finally, I felt a good reason. I feel really good about being an atheist. I know I'm a good person. I believe in being good to each other outweighs the belief that there is an improvable afterlife. I am inconsiderate. I am a considerate and hopefully polite and courteous person. I am altruistic and help others when they need it and when I can give it. I have a good and moral foundation through my family's teaching and through evolution. I have no gods to worship, no hell to worry about, no heaven to make me do things I do not believe in, no belief in sin, and I have a strong identity that knows more about my natural world which I live in. Life is good to me. Thanks for listening.